Welcome to a new video, and in this video I want to do a camera review of the Xiaomi 11 Lite 5G NE. So let's get started. The Mi 11 Lite 5G NE comes with a triple lens setup. So we have the main 64 megapixel sensor, we have a ultra wide 8 megapixel and a 5 megapixel tele macro cam. And here you can see the exact specifications of this camera setup here on the Mi 11 Lite 5G NE. What do you think about this? You can write it down in the comment section. Is it adequate for the price point of 370 euros? Just write it down in the comment section. Let's come to the front-facing camera. 20 megapixels is plenty enough for this price region, I would say, but I will test out the photos and videos of this front-facing camera in a short while, and then you can see if this is really a good camera or not. So not only good on specs, but also good in reality. So let's start first with the videos. Front-facing camera and then the back-facing ones. So we start with the front-facing camera of the Mi 11 Lite 5G NE. Maybe I will just call it Mi 11 Lite because the 5G version NE and the normal 5G version have exactly the same camera setup. The only difference is the processor and maybe slightly then the ISP and image processing. So the Mi 11 Lite 5G NE has this 20 megapixel front-facing camera, and it offers 1080p 60 frames per second as maximum resolution, and this is what I'm recording in right now. You cannot go to 4K 30, which is, I think, a bummer. But how is stabilization on this one? Is there even any stabilization? It looks very steady on my screen right now, but we will see how it will look like then in reality. I'm walking towards the sun. This is why we have the sun now in the background, not here, but there. And if I turn around now, do we have good HDR? Sun flares I can see, and HDR, not so much. My face is exposed nicely, but the sky is blown out, as you can see. If I turn around a little bit, I think there's still some blown out highlights here in the background. So this is maybe not the best HDR front-facing camera, but it at least offers 1080p 60 frames per second, which is, I think, pretty nice. So let's try out the main camera on the back. Now the main back camera, 1080p 60 frames per second as well, and I'm walking, the sun in the background, and probably you will see some sun flares right now because I see it already on the little ring around the camera. What I figured out is that the front-facing camera has no image stabilization, at least at 1080p 60 frames per second. There was no image stabilization option at all, and I'm not sure if it's like just disappeared there or it's available in lower resolution, or there's no image stabilization, which will be a bummer, at least for vloggers, if you don't want to use the back facing camera as vlogging, which you can do, of course, but you don't see yourself, which might be a bit of a bummer. Where am I right now? Because some people were asking me that know that I'm in Germany and in Cologne. This is the first FSV Köln in 1899, as you might see here in the background. So there's the sports club, football club, where they're playing football. Right now nothing is going on here, but there's like a little place here where you can play a little bit of football, and you can see the rings maybe in the background. Nice blurry background probably, where they are playing usually. And image stabilization is pretty decent, I would say, on the back facing camera, though it doesn't have OIS. Of course, for this price range probably you're not going to expect it, but I think it's pretty nice, and for this light, bright conditions, you don't have any issues when it comes to stabilization. Colors, HDR, you can write down in the comment section what you think about it. And this is the little test with the main camera of the Mi 11 Lite 5G NE. Now the ultra wide angle on the Mi 11 Lite 5G NE, and is it really ultra wide angle? You might notice already that the frame rate is quite different here, because, like I pointed out in my unboxing, you can only record in 1080p 30 frames per second on the ultra wide angle 8 megapixel sensor. I think it's the same megapixel and the same sensor actually than in the Redmi Note 10 Pro, and also I think the Xiaomi 11T and 11T Pro series. So it's like a very mid-range 8 megapixel sensor that we saw already so many times, and I really would like them to update it to at least 13 or 12 megapixels, so you can get like 4K going. You have a faster readout speeds maybe sensor as well, so you can get 1080p 60 frames per second at least. But otherwise for vlogging maybe also not bad, but of course it doesn't have any autofocus, so it's the same limitation, the same sensor. And probably I will do a comparison with the Redmi Note 10 Pro device as well in this 8 megapixel ultra wide angle, and you will probably see not much of a difference. Maybe they put a different front glass, a better lens on there, so it might be a bit sharper and reproduces colors a little bit different, also to the ISP, depending on the ISP of course. But yeah, this is the ultra wide angle 1080p 30 frames per second on the Mi 11 Lite 5G NE. And here one of the cool new features that many phones offer now, dual video mode. And here you can see me with the front facing camera, and you can see where I'm walking, and I can move myself also around. I can also make myself a little bit bigger if I want to, completely big, and then what I see in front is like smaller. But I think it suffers a little bit that there is no image stabilization on the front cam, which is a bit of a bummer. But yeah, it's a nice feature to have, and I'm not sure, for vloggers maybe interesting, but otherwise I think a bit boring. So now on Pro mode on the Mi 11 Lite 5G NE, and you might notice directly from my voice that I'm not using my microphone. I'm using the internal mics to test out how they sound like. And I'm recording in Pro mode right now, so with a fixed shutter speed. I didn't quite get it to 1/100 that you need for like a shot here with 60 frames per second, but 1/200 is what I set right now, so it gives you a bit better motion blur maybe. And yeah, this is what you can expect. The good thing about this is that you have the ability not only to use the main lens, but you can also use the macro and ultra wide lens in Pro mode, so it gives you all the creative options that you might need from this mid-range device setup, because the cameras are good and you can use them up to your full potential with this setup and the option for Pro video mode, which is super. Now macro video mode here in Pro mode. So as you can see here, I can get a little bit closer. I can even like zoom in if I want to get even more out of this little leaf and its stem. I think that's what I'm focusing on right now. It's a bit bad that I have to like get very close, but it's like a macro lens, so you have to get very close to get something. And this is a leaf, how it looks like, and I can even zoom in a little bit, so you can see probably more details. It's not stabilized, so sorry for the shakiness. It's windy here as well, but it works, which is nice. Enough videography, now let's start some photography, and let's take a look at some of the photos that I shot with the Mi 11 Lite 5G NE. So here is the first picture that I want to show you, the first photo that I took, a selfie, and what we can see here clearly is we have an overexposed background. So what the Xiaomi 11 Lite 5G NE's front camera problem is the lack of dynamic range. So we have an issue with dynamic range, and you can see it here with the overexposed background clearly. When it comes to details, I think it is okay. I saw better already, and I had beauty filter disabled. Of course, you can see some grain already in this like dim situation at home. I don't think it's too dim or too dark, but anyway, this is what you can get in terms of selfie capability. I will come back to the selfie in a minute when I'm going outdoors. Here we are outdoors. This is the main camera, and I think color calibration is good. It's not 100% realistic. They're adding a bit of punch in and making the sky a little bit bluer than it is, but it looks realistic. The green grass here is a bit too punchy, I would say, so a bit too green, and here on the background, this I think they managed to do well. So reds are not like too punchy, and this red is, as you can see, a bit of yeah, not too punchy. It's a bit of like a dim situation where we see that the red is a little bit less pronounced, and I think this is very, very good. So they managed to do this, keep this in balance in terms of colors, not to have too punchy colors, and in this high contrast situations you still can see a little bit of details in the shadows, so the dynamic range is also good on this camera. And when we go to the edges, we still have not 100% sharp edges, just like in the middle, but pretty good on the main camera sensor, which is, and the main camera lens especially, which is, I think, pretty awesome. And there's sharpness applied, you can see this here, but it is very, very subtle. When we zoom in, 2x digital crop, is it really a crop? I'm doubting this a little bit, because of the quality is a little bit degrading, but you can see here in this bright situation you get a bit more detail, you get a bit more stuff. So it looks good here, but this is like a painting basically. You look at the trees in the background, you can see, whoa, this doesn't look so good anymore. So this is why I'm doubting that it's really a crop in the sensor. 2x it's just like probably a digital zoom and then applying some filters extra on top, because the detail loss is just too much. You can see here graining already coming in. You can see some aliasing as well, and colors look the same, which is, yeah, when you crop in on the main sensor, it's usual, but it's not only a crop into the main sensor, it is some digital enhanced version, which I really don't like. The ultra wide angle looks good to me here, has a good dynamic range, I would say, a little bit overblown maybe here in this part and the edge. You can see when we're talking about the edge, the sharpness is not there, it is very soft and it's, yeah, mushy. When we take a look at the middle here where the building is, I think it is okay. There's over sharpening applied, or the sharpening applied, which looks a little bit too much for my taste. I would like them to put maybe a better lens or sensor inside. It would like work wonders for getting sharper shots. Otherwise the edges are okay, but I saw better already. But we have to keep in mind this is a mid-range device, and for a mid-range device I think this is, yeah, the ballpark where it's playing at. So it's not better, but not awfully bad in terms of this. This also another shot to see how dynamic range is working, so the shadows are not too dark. And when we take a look at here, this is the main lens. The sharpness, there is some sharpness applied to it, which makes it look a little bit artificial and smartphone-y look. And interestingly enough, here it's sharp, and here a few meters it's like unsharp. We're getting very unsharp on the edges, which is something I really don't know why, because this edge is okay. So some weird problem that happened here on this shot. Just telling you what or how it is. This is something I was very impressed with. This is a 2x crop or 2x digital zoom, which worked nicely here with this background blur. You have this sign in focus. Of course, if I zoom in here, you can see some digital artifacts. You can see some busyness in the bokeh in the background. So you might think, okay, this might be a digital crop and not really yeah, a physical 2x zoom, but still it is pretty good. You can read everything what is here on the sign, and the bokeh looks also okay. So yeah, it is not the best, I saw better, but I think the 2x crop is working fine for the 11 Lite 5G NE. When we take a look at further zooming in, then it falls apart. No chance in hell that it can produce anything usable. This is now this is the 5x digital zoom. I call it digital zoom because of this digital zoom, and it's one of the worst I saw so far. So it looks okay in this piece so far. It might be still okay, but as soon as you go to 100%, it's like abstract or modern art or something like this. It is not really usable at all. And the same goes for the maximum 10x zoom. It's like magnifying everything, and it's like no details at all. And yeah, it's simply a camera system where you don't want to zoom in, at least not further than 2 times zoom, because then everything looks bad. And even at 2 times zoom, you get okayish photos, but not good photos. Then I promised you the selfie cam again, now in portrait mode. And in portrait mode, I have to say it does a very good job, especially when you take a look at the cutout, my hair. Yeah, there's a bit of glow. It has something to do also with the overblown highlight in the background. So what I noticed is detail levels are there for not having autofocus. I think it's cool. You can see I missed like shaving this part of it. Anyway, you can see here at the side as well, there's getting a bit blurry, but it is a good cutout. Here maybe not 100% accurate, but it is a good cutout, and you get a nice blur. But you don't have any HDR in portrait mode, so they suffer a little bit like Sony selfie cameras on high-end Sony cameras, where they cameras on smartphones like the Xperia 1 or the Xperia 5, where they also don't have HDR on selfie or portrait mode. And this is here the same with the 11 Lite 5G NE, so don't try to take a selfie against the sun or in very bright and darker conditions, so you don't have high dynamic range. This one is loading a little bit more because this is a full 64 megapixel photo that I took with the phone, and I have to say I'm a little bit disappointed. I'm first of all impressed by the zoom capabilities. As you can see here, I can zoom into the old lady with her 2 dogs and can see pretty much the details of what's going on, but it is lacking details. It's not 100% sharp, and yeah, it's a bit mushy and not really what I was hoping for. I tried it another time with this shot, and here I hoped to get to see what is written on this little sign, but when I zoom in you can see, yeah, okay, I can see this, that there's a sign, but I cannot read anything. And here the only thing I can read is this here, and yeah, so the 64 megapixels really don't bring me anything more in terms of quality. Even if I crop in, I think with the 2 times crop or zoom with a JPEG on the device, I will get a little bit better results than taking a 64 megapixel photo and then later crop in post to have my ideal photo. So no, 64 megapixels I wouldn't really recommend because the details are a bit lacking. This is the ultra wide angle. You can see the clouds are still there. It looks a bit dramatic, but it was really like this. It was very windy, and when we take a look here in situations where the sun is like going down or where the sun is like not visible at all, the ultra wide angle falls apart completely. Here we still have a little bit of sharpness, but as soon as you take a look here, you can see the over sharpening applied here. You can see it's a big green mushy field. You don't see any details at all, and let's don't talk about the sides here, the edges of the frame where it's like no details at all. So the ultra wide angle, as soon as it gets a little bit darker, you can really forget the ultra wide angle. And let me double check why I don't think you have the ultra wide angle. It doesn't even help. Maybe it would help when you go to the night mode and then you take an ultra wide night mode photo, because this is possible to do so. For some reason it's also possible to do a night photo with 2 times crop on the sensor. I did not try that out here, but I was not aware that you have to do this to get maybe a better result in this here. So as soon as it gets a bit cloudy, maybe try the night mode on the ultra wide angle, otherwise forget it. The main sensor does a lot better. As you can see here, we have a brighter exposure. When we take a look here, we can see details on the main sensor here on the field, on the football field itself. There is a bit of sharpening applied, but I would say it's normally the usual one. Again, for some reason, maybe it's my unit, the left side is a bit more unsharp than the right side, which looks a bit more sharp for some reason. So maybe the lens or something like this. You can see here the edge, until the edges, everything is sharp, and here it's not. It is clearly a lot unsharp on the left edge. I'm not sure why. There's no screen protector on the lens, anything that could cause this, or any plastics or something like this. So I'm not sure why that is. Maybe it's only my unit. When we zoom in or crop in, basically using the 2x zoom, the exposure changes a little bit, which is a bit weird. So it's getting a bit more brighter, as you can see here. Dynamic range is a bit gone. I would say this is like overblown now. But when we take a look at the details, they are still there. There's a bit of noise creeping in, as you can see here. There's aliasing going on, but we can see a little bit more. We can see that there are two people standing here that I think we could only like maybe not really see, but only guess eventually. You can see some trucks in the background, but this is like getting like a bit of a painting effect in the background. What we can read at least here, the telephone number if we want to call the tennis club Fort Köln. And again on the left side, I think it is getting a bit more unsharp than on the right side for some reason. And anyway, I think the 2x crop is the maximum that we want to do to have like still acceptable stuff, but don't zoom in too much, and especially not on the edges. Then nighttime photography, I didn't have any chance to really go out to take nighttime photography in terms of like how does it behave with bright lights or something like this. I will try to do that somehow in my comparison with the Redmi Note 10 Pro eventually. But when it comes to nighttime photography, they have the approach of making daylight out of nighttime. In this case, it was very dark in this chamber here, in this little one, and it really managed to impress me in terms for mid-range device to create such an exposure here, which is not super bright, but it's very, very dark. I couldn't see the colors here, so dark, so it was so dark, and here I get really the right colors at least. So this is yellow, this is really this pinkish red, more pink than red, and yeah, this is really this turquoise and blue kind of packaging. So they managed to do this right. When it comes to details, it lacks details. This is now taken with the main camera, and you can see I don't even bother with the ultra wide angle because the ultra wide angle would be worse, but the main camera, because it doesn't have OIS, it suffers a lot there in creating a steady shot. And I think if you don't have OIS, you have to have a good AIS or EIS to compensate for it, and here you cannot read what's written on here. And if I would photograph it in bright daylight conditions, you could read what it is in here. So this is like the problem, and you have like a little bit of this how's it called, this effect where it's like a bit brighter in the middle, and on the outsides you can see it's a bit darker as well. So yeah, it's okay for mid-range device. In the flagship department you can see better. What is my main concern here is maybe the lack of detail, but I'm impressed still nevertheless of how much it is able to brighten up the scene here in the bathroom with closed door, no light on, and there's no window at all. Wow. I'm impressed that it captured the white as white. Of course, there's almost no detail at all, and trying to read the instructions for putting on this mask. This is a mask that you really want to put on if you want to beautify yourself, as you can see. No, I'm not wearing this kind of thing. You can read a little bit here maybe, but not the instructions at all. You can see it's noisy, but nevertheless, it got the colors right, and the exposure is okay. The details are lacking. This is one of the problems in night modes a little bit, but it is basically the mid-range standard. When it comes to colors in general, I want to talk about this again. Red and green is always the problem. They are a bit punchier. The reds are a little bit pronounced here as well, as you can see. The greens are also a little bit punchier. There's a bit of contrast added, but it's not on a Redmi Note 10 Pro level, I would say. But this is disclaimer, I did not test it against the Redmi Note 10 Pro yet. I will do a test against the Redmi Note 10 Pro, but my first impression seeing this photo, I'm glad that it doesn't add too much contrast to the photo. That would have ruined the photo in my case a little bit. I don't like it to be too contrasty, and I think they found the right balance here, which is pretty nice. And then in terms of high dynamic range, here you could say, oh, this looks like a nice sun going down photo, but it's too dramatic. They clearly did something to the colors, and nope. This is what impressed me a little bit, is it looks dramatic, but it was this dramatic. This is why I put out my phone to take the photo. And the dynamic range is good. It's not perfect, as you can see here. This is blown out, the highlights, but it's looking very good. There is of course some noise creeping in, as you might see here on the wall, especially because it was a bit of darker condition, but still they managed to take a good shot, and I can still see the houses and some details on the houses and the rooftops without it being too dark. So I think high dynamic range is okay. In the mid-range department, maybe with the Nova 9, though the Nova 9 is a lot more expensive, I think €200 more expensive, we can see better high dynamic range. Otherwise you have to go up to a flagship device to get really truly difference in high dynamic range. So this is pretty good and awesome. Then another photo where I want to show you that this is not macro mode, this is the main camera sensor. You can also get like macro like shots, and I like them a little bit more than the real macro shots. With the real macro shots you can get maybe a little bit closer to the stem here, but you can see so much detail already with the main camera, nice background blur, and this is what you really want to have, because if I switch to the macro cam, you get maybe closer, maybe a little more detail, but you don't get this nice background blur. So I would prefer this. I didn't show you any photo of the macro cam because there's a video that shows basically the capabilities of the macro cam. 5 megapixels, it has autofocus, you can do videos with it, which is I think pretty awesome and pretty good. So overall my impression here, it's a solid mid-range contender, and I think from all the other ones that I saw so far, it is leaning towards less contrasty look, which I really prefer. Has colors a bit punchy, but not too much punch into them. And also when I have like my top mid-range devices in terms of camera so far that I tested, the LG Wing is I think still the top one with its camera system. Then I would put the 11 Lite 5G and E to it, and then the rest like Honor 50 and the Redmi Note 10 Pro almost neck to neck, as well as then what was it, iPhone SE 2020. So this is everything for the photos. So what do you think about the Mi 11 Lite 5G NE and its camera system? Is it a good camera system for the price, 370 euros? Can it compete even with the Redmi Note 10 Pro? What do you think? I will do, of course, a video comparison and photo comparison of the Redmi Note 10 Pro against the Mi 11 Lite 5G NE as well, so you can compare them one by one. But what do you think about this? Are there maybe other camera systems for this price range that are working better than this one? Write it down in the comment section. What is your impression of this camera of the Mi 11 Lite 5G NE? That is basically everything for this little video. Share, like and subscribe, and until the next time, bye.